Welcome to The Mill. Very excited to have a special guest with us today, Tara Whitney. Tara's pronouns are she, her, and hers. Tara coaches female leaders to maximize their performance by improving their executive presence. Clients often hire Tara when they're challenged by perfectionism, people pleasing, and lack of visibility. I feel like I'm describing myself here. She draws upon her training with the Gestalt International Study Center and her extensive business and entrepreneurial background when working with her clients. She's a published author and speaker. Her latest book, Truly Seen, Stop Striving to be Thin and Perfect and Set Yourself Free, examines the impact unrealistic standards of perfection have on women and how they can define success and happiness on their own terms. Her first book, Hungry, Trust Your Body and Free Your Mind Around Food, offers a fresh perspective on why women have struggled with food and gives them a path to set themselves free. Tara started her career as a CPA, working for one of the big four public accounting firms, and then worked in corporate accounting for over 15 years. She has founded and grown several businesses, including an accounting consulting firm and a yoga studio. Tara, thank you so much for being here. It's great to have you.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Yeah, it is fun. We
Yeah,
try to keep them
it
light.
is.
It's just it's gotta the world is so serious these days, People are always
Yeah,
like, "Oh, you're not like talking about marketing specific stuff." And I'm like, I mean, we
mm,
could, but I do that for a living. It's kind of nice to have some refreshing conversations every now and then.
yeah. Well, I remember the first time I met you at an event at UNH, and it was like you're so engaging, and the conversation go flows so easily. So I've been looking forward to this for a while.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's just, coffee with friends
Right.
virtually on a screen as we're still here. Okay, so I want to start with some
Perfect.
personal questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
You started a lot of businesses of different variety.
Mhm.
What inspired you to get into entrepreneurship? And can you kind of talk through the steps of your career and how you ended up where you are today? That is a loaded question, but I'm going to turn it over
Yeah.
to you to take it away.
Yeah. Well, it was a combination of need and passion, and each business sort of had a mix of those things. When my first business that I started was my accounting consulting firm, and I did it because, it was probably 2007, and we had just moved up to New Hampshire from the Boston area, and kids were like, I had three kids under the age of 7. And at the time, unlike where it is right now, I was like, I need to work from home. I need flexible hours. Like, I'm fine with doing all the things, but I want to get the kids off the bus. I want to be able to get dinner on the table a few nights a week without feeling like I'm losing my mind. And so I really started my firm because I needed to have control over my own schedule, and I needed to be able to dictate my hours. And I was perfectly fine, working after the kids got to bed, but it was like I just needed to do it my way. And so luckily, I was poised to do that and create something where um, that worked, and it worked really well. And then the fun thing about I call it's RGA Financial Solutions, so I'm no longer running that firm right now. But it was really, and it's cool because I brought in a lot of moms who had finance and accounting backgrounds, and they were in somewhat of a similar situation with than me. They were like, "Look, I don't want to work full time. I want to work part time, but I've got this expertise. I just can't, I don't necessarily want to be wed to having to be in the office at this time every single day." They just were looking for the flexibility. And then I also hired college kids. I offered internships to mostly women who were ambitious and wanted to get their CPA, and hired them to come and work for me. So it felt like a good blend of just the needs that the current environment were not offering women. And, I offered a small little area to meet those needs.
I love that. I also only bring on female interns. I've only ever had
Mm,
female employees. Our collective is the vast majority is female.
yeah.
Um, I'm all about it. I think that there aren't enough opportunities for women. There are tons of opportunities for men. Let's just call it
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
And so I have no shame in saying that I love empowering other women to get into whatever it is they want to do, whether it be it
Yeah.
entrepreneurship or go work for another company or, you know, take care of yourself and your own mental health, whatever you want to do. I'm 110% behind you for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it's just some, I think women just often need like the half step, just, the
Hmm.
benefit of the half step ahead, or just getting to the starting line that, men typically
Yeah.
are already there, I think is really important to do. And so that felt great, and that will continue to feel great when I, potentially do that in the future. And then with my yoga studio, that probably came from passion. That came from uh, practicing something and being part of a community that was really transformational. I never imagined myself as a yoga teacher. I never imagined myself owning a yoga studio. But when I moved up to the seacoast, I realized that the Boston area was offering some specific kind of yoga that the seacoast area wasn't. And I thought, well, what if I just did this on my own and see and just introduce it, just kind of create something that, I mean, I love it. I'm sure other people like me would love it as well. And it was a heated power studio, which is a very specific kind of yoga. And I think the fun part about that is people did love it. And I even hear today, Rachel, people will say to me, like, that community, that studio, like, I still think about those classes. I still think about what it was like to be there. And the fun part is, even though, that studio is closed, there's probably 5 or 6 studios that are now in the whole Seacoast area, that for folks that either I trained as yoga teachers or came from like that my little community that I created. Not some directly and then some indirectly, which is also kind of fun. I mean, it was at a time where the yoga studios were growing and expanding, and so it felt like it also met some needs, but it was fueled from that passion of like really just loving something so much.
I think a lot of people ignore that feeling or think it's not possible to turn something that they're passionate about into a profitable business.
Yeah,
And when people ask me, what do you think separates you and Mill and Co? We're not the only company that does advertising and marketing and content and strategy, for sure. We are not the only one. We're one in millions. What separates us is the relationship we have with our clients, the community that we build, the things we do for the community, for women, for children, the DEI initiatives that we support and sponsor. That community building is what separates us and makes us a choice for people. It's a lingering relationship that they're going to think of us first. We're very good at what we do, right? We're very, very good at it. Are we the best in the world? I don't know. Maybe. But people come to us because that you create a relationship, you create something that they're going to want to have a part of their everyday experience. So whenever I'm talking to aspiring entrepreneurs, that's kind of my feedback to them is you need to create something that people want. They need it.
right,
You can be passionate till, the day is done, but if you're not going to build reasons for people to come and then to stay and then to advocate,
right.
what are you doing?
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. I mean, yoga teachers have come to me and said, "Oh, I'm thinking of opening my own studio. What do you think?" And it's often like, my response always is, if there's a studio out there that's offering the same thing that you want to offer, please don't open your own studio. Like, just go teach for
Mm,
them. But if you really feel
yeah.
like to your point, you're offering something incredibly unique, you're filling a need, you're creating a nuance that's very unique to you, and you're not seeing it being offered in your area or in the environment, then absolutely go for it. And then distinguish yourself as someone who's solving either that challenge or offering something so unique that's not currently being offered right now. Because otherwise
Yeah.
it just creates, um, it's, you know this well, better than anybody. Like starting your own business is not a small undertaking. It's not something that you can turn on a dime, and there's a lot of pieces to it, and it takes time, and it's it's an investment, and so it's important to think through all the different pieces, before jumping in.
And having that desirability once you've gone
Yeah,
through with the hoops and the pieces of building it,
yeah,
you have to have desirability, which comes in many forms of having something unique to offer, building a community, etc. So
right.
you do a lot. You have personal passions, you have professional passions, you've started and sold and closed businesses. How what do you do for yourself? Like how do you stay true to what you need and make sure that your cup isn't overflowing in a bad way?
Mm, yeah, I do a lot of tending to myself. So
Mm.
thank you for this question. This is such a great question. Um, I do a lot of tending to myself, which means there's a lot of internal check-in and observation and awareness around sort of like what's the pulse? Like what's my inner pulse right now? Um, and I feel like thanks to my yoga experience and my mindfulness practice and my coaching practice that, I use those skills like within myself. And that can mean that I'm often asking myself, what do I need right now? And I have the privilege to often take the time to give myself what I need, whether that's a half an hour walk in the middle of the day or, time off or time at the beach or whatever it is. So I feel like that tending to myself is a constant narrative and internal conversation. I think also I really go out of my way to surround myself with support. And that support can look like other like colleagues and friends that are in a similar business that I am that I get to connect with on a regular basis, and we're talking things out. I'm sharing, I'm pulling the curtain back and sharing what's really on my mind as opposed to sharing what, you know, not like I would ever do that, but I'm in a position where I can be vulnerable and true to myself and really share what's going on for me. And I have safe spaces for those conversations. And I have tremendous support too with my own family. So they often, I have a red chair, a comfy red chair in my office, and more often than not, especially when I was writing my books, my kids would come in and I'd be like, I need to talk to you about this. Like, what do you think? And so I have people that I live with that I will talk through problems with and just sort things out and process with them. And that's been really helpful.
Yeah. And I think for anyone listening and watching, if you don't have that system, let's start to build it. Who are you
Mm,
meeting? Who are some of your clients? Who are people that maybe you've connected with at a networking event? It doesn't always have to be someone that's been in your life forever and has known you since high school and has done all the things. So there's been a lot of women that I've met even within the past year that have become unbelievable centers of support for me. And I think it's one thing that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with is I have to do this by myself. I got to do it. Like I got to prove this to myself. I have a little bit of imposter syndrome. And then because of that, because we are so internalizing everything that we're doing in our own decisions and seeking help as a weakness, not a
right,
strength,
right.
a lot of people are suffering in silence. So I hope if you're watching and you're like, oh, I've got my gang, I'm good, I've got my people. If you don't, you probably do, you know, just
Yeah,
check in with those
they're
people
out
and
there.
understand like A, having the people, but B, what is it that you need them to solve? For you, you're very self-reflective, you're very self-aware, you're highly emotionally intelligent. It, I'm sure, has taken time to get there, but it comes a little easier to you to return in and say, okay, why am I feeling this way? What's causing me to feel this way? I'm going to go and seek some help. So I really, I've talked about this on a lot of podcasts. It really keeps coming up, but that self-awareness, the grace giving to ourself for feeling that way, and then seeking support from someone that you feel safe with, that to me, that's kind of the circle of success for women, particularly in business.
Absolutely. And I think for entrepreneurs in particular, I think business growth and personal growth go hand in hand. So I
Mhm,
can reflect
mhm.
back to how I was running my accounting business and how I was running my yoga studio. And for certain, Rachel, like I would not run them the same way I would run them today because my business challenges were my personal challenges. And I couldn't necessarily see that at the time because it was just like, I just didn't have the awareness to understand what was happening for me. Um, but now, we grow, we expand, our businesses become a teacher for us, and we learn because of it. And so that's where um, it's like having just recognizing that our businesses can be such an amazing reflection of not what of like what the opportunity is to kind of go inside and say like what is happening here, where am I getting in my own way, or where is the opportunity for me to sort of do things that I don't normally do because the business is asking for it, not because and because the business is a catalyst for my own
Right,
growth. And I can
right.
think of a bunch of ways in which that I got my own way, and that was something that in the business that I'm growing right now, it's I'm aware of those things, and it's really fun to be thinking like how I can be taking those teachings and taking this next opportunity into what's next.
I love that. Your business is an extension of you, for sure. It grows with you, it matures with you, it struggles with you, it succeeds with you.
Yeah.
And so
And it
the more work that we can do on ourselves really is impactful on the success of our business.
absolutely, and there is something to be said for like what you've created at Milico is a reflection of what you value. And
Mhm.
so I know that when I was pivoting and closing and selling businesses, it was very much like, oh wow, this was inside of me. This was something I created because it like all of those things were just beating and living and needed to come out because of who I am. And I think that's where our businesses are so personal. And I can't speak to whether this is just primarily what women often do or if just all men and women do this as well, but it often is like, hey, if I'm going to create a business, the culture naturally emerges from what we value and what we intentionally try to create. Or the culture comes from maybe something that was in our blind spot. But either way, it becomes a creation, a personal creation. So it makes sense that that creation is a result of whatever is happening with us internally, the patterns, the
And
emotions,
more.
like all of those things.
Yeah. Values. It really does come down to value. And then, the evolution of the business to me is really making sure you're clear on your values and that you are continuously working towards affirming those values and staying honest to them. I want to shift gears just slightly and talk about your books. They both touch on self-image issues that a lot of people struggle with. Um, Talk to me about that. Tell me the story behind the books, what actually pushed you to write them. What were you hoping that these books did for people who were reading?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I love talking about my my books. Um,
Gentle plug
so
here.
yeah, no, so I really at the heart of it, at the very heart of it, it was the realization that I came to and I continue to come to over and over again that And well, let's just take the first one as an example. So, Hungry, Trust Your Body and Free Your Mind Around Food. That was really a book that came, I wrote really quickly. Like, I probably could have written it a few years before because everything was just ready to come out. And what I share in there was how the struggles that women have around food, what's so heartbreaking is the wasted time and energy and the the whole sense and feeling that women will often have that they're failing themselves because of their relationship with food. And that's because we live in a culture, we live in diet culture where we're told that we need to prioritize the rules of a diet over the inner wisdom that we walk around with. And that continues. That diet culture continues to have a strong hold on everyone, but mostly women. And so what I saw was how for women who really wanted to make a profound impact in the world and that impact doesn't have to be I'm going to run for president or I want to be the CEO of this company. It could be my profound impact is I want to care for an aging parent, or my profound impact is I want to change, my community politics, or I want to raise my young child. Whatever that impact is, that from my own personal experience, I felt like, wow, I wasted so much time and energy thinking, worrying, planning, being completely preoccupied with what I was eating and what the number on the scale was and how it was just bullshit. Like I needed to call bullshit on the whole entire thing because it was not I think so many people think of their weight and their relationship with food as the solution. And what I was pointing out was, no, 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 this is the problem. This is not the solution. This is the problem. This is what is getting in your way. This is what is taking time and it'll never pay off. Because even in my own relationship with food and my challenges with weight, it was always like, it was never good enough. I could never do it well enough. I could never be at the right weight. There was no sense of true ease and satisfaction. And so so that felt like I think the themes with both books was just all around liberation. Like how can we liberate ourselves from something that we're born into? We think we're doing the right thing and we're not because the mechanisms inside of those structures are not designed for our success and our feeling of well-being. So that was the first book. And then my most recent book, Truly Seeing How Stop Striving to Be Thin and Perfect and Set Yourself Free. Really what I was doing there is calling out the patriarchy. And I think now that we've seen the Barbie movie, which is great, and they've started the conversations around what the patriarchy is and how it operates, like what I was really saying there is like we've got this structure that I call the promise of the thin and perfect and I wanted to create a mechanism for people to understand so that they could see it and tangibly look at it and say, oh, right, when I continue to try to be perfect, then all I'm doing is putting myself in a trap. And that trap is something that's never going to liberate me. It's always going to keep me in the confines of these ideals that that promise that I'll be happy and feel successful when in fact all I'm doing is I'm distracting myself. I'm not feeling like I'm good enough and I feel like I'm a failure. And so it's really like trying to create a form of like women taking back what's been taken from them as solutions that are in fact problems. And when they can see them as problems, then they can say, oh, guess what? I have a choice. I can either go down this road, but let me go down this road wide, eyes wide open, or maybe there's this other road that I get to go down. And this other road is all about how do I value and reconnect with myself and see that I'm the source of my own power. I don't need it from these external things.
Speaking right to my soul, Tara, I remember very distinctly At a company I used to work for, they brought in a bunch of food, wraps, subs, sandwiches, and the salad was just kind of like a bowl of salad, but it was really like heartier sandwiches and bags of chips and whatever. And I remember I was waiting in line, and there were a bunch of men and women in front of me, and um, every man in front of me got like two pieces, like a sandwich, like a whole piece together, two halves, chips, maybe a little salad on the side, like filling the plate. Free food, right? Free food. Who doesn't want free food? Every single woman ahead of me, it started with the first one. She went up and she didn't touch any of the sandwiches. She just filled her plate with salad. Then the next one did the same thing. And then the next one did the same thing. And I'm like, am I on camera? Is this a psychology experiment where they're going to be like, the fourth, she's going to take the salad? And I'm like, I'm kidding. I'm hungry. I need to get some
Yeah.
food. And I remember filling my plate, and it's very subtle, but if you're looking for it, you can see people that will like kind of glance over and be like, oof, oof, man,
Is this
she
okay?
got the prosciutto and the eggplant. Yeah, of course I did. But I remember that feeling at work. So, there's food, there's body image issues that impact us on a lot of levels. But then when you add in the layer of the workplace, where we're already not getting the opportunities that we deserve and have earned, we're already being paid less. And now on top of that, we have to deal with someone looking at us because we're fueling our body.
Right.
And I will never forget that feeling. I remember sitting there, and it was like a messy sandwich. Now I'm making a scene, right? It's like down my elbows, and I'm just leaning into it. But I felt I'm a very confident individual. I felt ashamed. I was embarrassed. It's the funny fat girl, that's just, oh, that's just what it is. And I was so embarrassed, but I was also like, I'm hungry. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna withhold that for myself. And so I think the work that you're doing, Tara, is so important because it impacts us on every single level. And food is not just fueling you from a nutritional perspective, but it should fuel you to be able to go do things and stand up for yourself and feel satisfied. And it's heartbreaking when I've watched a lot of friends struggle with body image issues and food issues, and frankly starve themselves. I'm getting married this year. I have not starved myself. I will not starve myself. I eat and I work out and I live my life. But um, the pressures that society puts on us that we then take and then amplify on ourselves
Yeah.
is crushing. It's just
It,
crushing.
it is, and thank you for sharing your story, because even if you just take a step back and look at what that mechanism did, right? It said we're going to put this, and we can look at the nuances of how that mechanism was created, but let's just look at it as is, because there it was. We are going to make sure that women don't aren't fueled. We're going to make sure that they don't have enough food. We're going to make sure that they're hungry, that they don't have enough, that they don't have the calories, the sustenance to be able to go to work and do a sufficient job because they have the energy to do it. And that's just one small piece of what drives me absolutely bonkers with all of this, because the women in front of you, Rachel, probably thought, I'm going to be good, this is the right thing to do, and whatever it is, or I can't let them see me eat a normal plate of food, like
Right.
in even what went through your mind, right? Like, wouldn't it have been really cool to be in an office environment and not be thinking or even talking about food, but talking about other fun things, with whether you're connecting with a colleague on a personal level, or you're strategizing some business, or talking about a client, or whatever it is. Like, there are so many more important things in this world to be talking about and sorting through and connecting around than roast beef or balsamic vinaigrette, like all the things. And that's where I feel like that's why Truly Seen was an important book for me to write, because everything that women are doing around these issues, perfectionism and pursuing thinness, is so incredibly normalized that we're not calling them out enough as an issue that has consequences, personal, like to your point, personal suffering. And, instead, the mechanism is like, oh, this must just be me not being able to be disciplined enough. This must be me not having enough time. I need to just hire my personal trainer, or I just need to do all the things, instead of seeing these external pressures and patriarchy, the nuances of the patriarchy as the problem. Because unless we call it out for what it is, we're going to continue to put it inside of us and think that we're somehow doing it wrong. And that is the missed opportunity for women to be able to take everything that's inside of us, acknowledging our power and presence, and being able to take it into whatever environment we want to take it in and make the difference we want to make.
Right. And thin is not successful. Pretty is not successful. And don't get me wrong, I work out probably 5 to 6 days a week. I love it. I lift, I ride my bike, I'll go for runs and walks. I'm very, very active. As a former Division One lacrosse player, I can't ever not be that way, and I enjoy it. I make really healthy food decisions, but I also eat a pint of ice cream last night. And it's taken me a long time, because I think people are either like, oh, just, you can eat whatever you want, or, oh, I only eat healthy, I only give myself one cheat meal. Whatever you're doing, that's your prerogative. My message is always, you just can't hate yourself for what you're doing. You're allowed to have what you want if it feels good, because we are all racing towards whenever our last day on earth is, right? You're going to get there no matter what. My uncle says to me all the time, Rachel, the minute you're born, your fate is etched in stone. He's right. We don't know. So,
Sure.
if today were your last day, doesn't mean overindulge. But what you can't do is be so hypercritical of yourself because you made a decision that felt good at the time.
Yeah. I think also, like, what gets dismissed is like the inner wisdom that we're all walking around with, that that is able to inform some of those choices. You know that when you're on your bike or you're running or doing all the things, that like there's feedback that your body's offering you that's like, oh, this feels so good. Now, the next woman might love being in the water swimming. The next woman might just love being in her garden. The next person might love whatever it is. But there's feedback that comes from this in the inside, from body sensation, body awareness, all of that I think often gets dismissed, so that this isn't just another way to follow rules, it's a way of following an inner compass. And that's really like the heart of the coaching that I'm doing, which is recognizing that, the more we look to the external and try to fit ourselves in and look for feedback there based on what everybody else is doing or what we think we should be doing, like that becomes like the shutdown. That becomes the, oh, let me turn into the person I think I need to be, as opposed to being the person that we already are. That's a lot of the Gestalt coaching method that I use, which is really being able to sort of be in and embracing of the whole self.
Mm. I love the inner feedback versus the outer feedback. We
Yeah.
don't listen to that enough. We don't listen to ourself enough. We think of it as a sign of weakness, or, if you're menstruating for a week and you're in horrific cramps, you're like, well, I just have to push through it. Maybe you take a day, you know?
Yeah.
Because if it
Yeah.
feels good to take a day and that's what your body needs and it's telling you that, then do it. Don't
Right.
feel like you have to power through, because if I don't do this, or if I tell people this is why I'm feeling this way, everyone's going to think I'm weak and vulnerable and, inept and can't do my job.
And I think this is the opportunity that a lot of female entrepreneurs have in building and growing and founding their own businesses, which is being able
Mhm.
to have something that's really missing in the marketplace, which is let's start this business in the honoring of self, instead of what we've been taught to do, which is the sacrifice of self. And let's
Mm.
sacrifice family, let's sacrifice time, let's sacrifice health, let's sacrifice sanity. Like that's what we've been taught for the sake of deadlines, productivity, revenue generation, whatever and I'm not saying those things aren't important, but the real opportunity is creating these businesses where the needs of self are at the heart of the business, because that's where the business will thrive. Like you're building Mill and Co on relationships and values. Like that's what fuels yourself, and that's what your clients love about working with you. And I think, if as female entrepreneurs recognize, like, let's embrace that as the start and recognize there's value there and trust ourselves enough to know that businesses founded on these things is really will be the business that will love to work inside of and grow, and people will love working with us as a result of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
completely wholeheartedly agree with everything you said. I want to ask if you're allowed to share, maybe, are there any future books, either in the works or topics that you're like, when I write a new book, if I write a new book, this is what it'll be about?
Oh my gosh. So I told my family, like, please do not let me write another book after this one. And then I was somewhere with my daughter Anna, she's 18, and I was like, shh, I have an idea. And I said, what do you think about this idea? She's like, no, mom, that's good. That's good. Like you should do that. You should do that. So so thank you for asking, and I'm not afraid to share this, because I think with books, one, it could take me 5 years to write a book, or it could take me 5 months. But I am really passionate right now around, and I think you've heard me talk about it, which is how women, um, professional service professionals, so experts that service clients, accountants, attorneys, consultants, strategy consultants, coaches, and such, that want to build their own businesses in their own way and do it on their own terms. And so what I'm doing is I'm creating that firm. I'm creating that firm as a way of a support for those firms, and being able to say, like, okay, how am I doing this? How am I going about it? What is the mindset that I have? What are the foundational pieces? And it's in its infancy. So my idea, I think what's really hot right now, and I just had a conversation with somebody about this yesterday, is this idea of tip books. Have you heard about these tip books? So it's like, here are the 52 tips, here are the 30 tips, here are the 22 tips. And it's the whole idea of like, no one wants to read a book, but they want the 12 things or the 20 things or the 52 things. And
Yeah.
so the idea that I have is, while I'm growing my firm, I'm going to be writing the tips that I'm learning,
Oh,
that I'm applying, that I'm doing. So it's a honestly, it's a light lift. It really is a light lift, because it could be the 52 things to keep in mind when you start your own professional services. When for women who want to start their own professional services firm, and then I'm going to just use myself as a case study, knowing that I'm going to be, talking about all the things. And so it's going to be it's meant to be a practical book, but also a way for me to kind of document, like I said, all the different ways, um, mistakes I've learned. I'm learning new opportunities and challenges that I'm overcoming, like all of those things.
it's brilliant. I can't wait to read it. Um, and again, I think what's so great about you, Tara, is you're authentic to everyone that you meet. There's no sugarcoating, there's no full face of, you know, figurative makeup. You meet someone and instantly they know exactly who you are, what you stand for. And so to build a business using yourself as your own case study is just brilliant. You've done this, you have lived this, you've walked these miles. So for other women and folks that are just interested in getting into this space, already you validated yourself because you're like, hi, I'm Tara Whitney and I have done this and I'm doing it again. And come along for the ride. Maybe you should hire a videographer and turn it into a video I'm serious. Turn it into something like that, just get a little camera and document the process because I think what's missing for me, there wasn't a handbook. I don't have
Right.
an MBA, I didn't go to business school. I just immediately started working and I learned stuff the hard way and the easy way and through help, but there was no guide to starting an advertising agency in the same way that a guide like this doesn't yet exist. And I think it's
Sure.
just brilliant to do this and you're putting your money where your mouth is to people. And that is a value of I am true, I'm authentic, I want to do this with you. We're in this shoulder to shoulder. And I'd be willing to bet, Tara, in the very few months of knowing you, that those are some of your values.
Well, thank you for saying all of that. Yeah, it feels, again, going back to sort of that inner compass, like this feels both, I love the experience I have in my body when it's like both grounded and light. So I get the grounded of like, oh, this is solid, but then there's this like light energy of flow that kind of goes along with that. And that's very much where I am with what's in front of me right now. And I use that as like, oh, like green light, yellow, like being able to know that I'm on the right track and the right path.
It's very cool. It's very cool. And so is this like a new addition into the coaching that you're doing now? Or is this kind of just a full pivot of what does the future look like for you?
Sure. Well, I look to really two revenue streams that would eventually be in the same
Mhm.
organization. I'm anchoring right now in the coaching revenue stream, which is coaching women leaders and women executives around what was in the bio, right? People pleasing, perfectionism, visibility. Those are critical things. And those are the things that women business owners also need when they're starting their own firm. And so around the needs of professional service firm owners that are women, looking at, well, what are the other pieces that they need to support them, and how does that fit with both what I can offer as a CPA and someone who worked with small businesses and also working with them around their strategy, but what other needs do they have? And that's where I'm looking at this next as my firm as not just me, but as a community of support for these women executives. And this is one of my learnings is with my other businesses is like this time I'm thinking bigger and I'm thinking in community. And those were the two things that I missed the first time. And I want to bring this into my next step, which is like, thinking broader. What is the problem that I can help women business leaders solve who are running professional services firms? And how can I do it not by myself, but with like a whole group of women that are around me that want to support and serve the same group of clients?
And from a business perspective, Tara, creating a singular process that can then be customized to a lot of people is
Yeah.
far more profitable than having every single thing be customized per person. It's different. Not to use a step and repeat, I think sometimes gets a bad rap and it sounds like it's a lazy way out. It's not. You create a
Yep.
solid base that is
Right.
applicable to a lot of people, but then it's customizable based on their unique situation. So from just a purely business perspective, this is thinking bigger. This is a scalable idea that is leveraging your skills, certifications, education, and experience.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and
You're
you're right.
welcome.
Like having that solid framework that I build the
Yep.
firm off of, absolutely. Tested and tried, knowing that every single woman that wants to do it her way doesn't have to. sort of feel like, where do I start? Where do I go? Like, how do I do all these things? They're, you know, they are really good at servicing clients, but might not have all the support they need to really be able to create the firm that they want to create, to be able to create all of that freedom for themselves and engage with their passion.
So if you're watching and you're like, that kind of sounds like me, please connect with Tara on LinkedIn. She will be tagged in this podcast and on our website. Tara, I cannot thank you enough. It has been such a joy having you in my life and getting to know you and running into each other and having you come to our events. And I'm really excited for this next phase for you. And I see a major opportunity. So please connect with Tara once you've watched this podcast. And I'm sure she'd be happy to have a conversation with you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. This has been a blast.